am doing a man's job. Sitting at the head of an executive board meeting, pitching my television show to a table of 10 different men, all 30, 40 years older than me. They snicker. They should have just hit the jackpot, right? I'm a young, impressionable woman in Hollywood. But not when I'm the one behind the camera instead of in front of it. Because I am not just a female director. I'm a director with a television show that is whispering into the biggest executives' ears, and the name of my show coming out of the biggest executives' mouths. When I was 12 years old, I began writing my television show, You Should Be Dead, 2 weeks after my dad passed away. Yes, this is 12-year-old me. You Should Be Dead was meant to be this scientific, horrific epic following the death of the protagonist's best friend. It was, in all honesty, not very good. I had never learned how to write previously, and I had no intention of directing. Throughout the past 3 years, You Should Be Dead has become my baby. I have written 44 episodes across 4 seasons, and I know the characters like the back of my hand. So much so that it became difficult for me to share them. But on a whim, during my first semester of my freshman year here at OSHA, I decided I was going to film a scene from You Should Be Dead for my editing class. I spent that Saturday with 1 crew member and 2 actresses, and suddenly this show that I had been developing for 3 years at that point had to be shared. From that moment on, it was no longer just me on the creative board, but it was 40 different OSHA kids across multiple conservatories in the cast and crew that were piecing the show together every single Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Having come from just being homeschooled, I had almost no collaborative efforts, and I began to lose my voice as a director. Episode 1 of You Should Be Dead took 5 months to direct, and on June 4th, 2023, it premiered at the Port Theater in Corona del Mar to a crowd of 250 people. There was this beautiful red carpet, and Getty Images arrived, and it was that day that I was given my first professional opportunity in the industry. The acting coach for one of the actors on You Should Be Dead reached out to me with connections into Hollywood's largest film studio. The plan was to pitch You Should Be Dead and have the show picked up in its entirety, so that way it could become a real television show in Hollywood. That summer, I was going to be spending my time in front of these real-life producers. I felt like a guppy in a pool of sharks. Because the process of creating episode 1 had already taken my voice as a creative, it just got worse as I began pitching it to real Hollywood professionals who I assumed wouldn't be interested in the authentic version of me. So I strapped on high heels and I did my makeup to appear older and wiser. And worst of all, I changed You Should Be Dead to be more form-fitting for an audience, even if it meant losing the reason why I wrote it in the first place. Even with all this added effort to glamorize myself and my project, I was still met with this one glaring phrase. God, you have so much potential. Potential? Calculating every single page and document that I have written for the show, it adds up to 1,082. Potential? And yet these producers, these mentors and directors, they told me, God, Lucy, you have so much potential, but I can't hear your voice. And they were right. My father was the reason why I began writing You Should Be Dead in the first place. He had this love for horror movies and science fiction, and when he died in 2020 due to his prolonged bout with throat cancer, I created the show as a way to cope. When a character would cry, those tears would be mine. But when it came down to creating the project, collaborating with 40 different people, I didn't have it in me to tell them that this wasn't just a fun project, but it was an homage to my father. And this only got worse as I began pitching it to real industry professionals who I assumed wouldn't want my vulnerability or my sob story. So my voice was lost, and I had to get it back. First, I had to learn how to collaborate with my cast and crew of almost 4 dozen people. The project was no longer just mine, and I had to accept that, and there was no way my show would have been able to find success if it weren't for them. So I started taking more suggestions. I admitted when I felt lost or at a dead end, and I allowed others to take the steering wheel during production. Second, I had to drop the act that I knew what the hell I was doing, because I didn't, and every single person in my life could see right through it. I wanted to re-add in instances of my father. Scenes that initially hit too close to home, I now had the courage to produce. And finally, I had to find confidence in my vulnerability, specifically as a woman. No longer would I try to be the cynical, wittier, older girl. I'm 16 years old. I am not to the best of my ability yet, but I can and will be. I do have potential, and that is not a bad thing. People do not connect with the story of You Should Be Dead because of its bloody imagery or its inspiration taken from Twin Peaks or Stranger Things. People connect with it because when you strip that all away, you have where this started. A crying 12-year-old girl who just lost her father, developing this story, these characters, as a way to cope, a story that is ultimately about grief and love. 3.5 years later, I can confidently say that tonight, that girl's voice is heard, and that girl's voice is mine. I took my potential and I spun it into something incandescent. Since then, You Should Be Dead has been featured in articles such as the LA Times and has a real promising future as a show in Hollywood that is fully fulfilled thanks to the wonderful producers and mentors and directors up in Los Angeles that have been helping me every single day for the past 6 months. I know what I've been through, and I took that damage and I turned it into something beautiful. To be a woman is not just to pretend to be a man. To be a woman is to cry, to panic, to be vulnerable. That is my voice. That is exactly who I am. Thank you.